Indigo Cop.
I'm Naomi Piper Pell.
And I'm Kira Duff.
And we're here today to record our Religion Long Conquest final podcast.
No one has ever recorded a podcast in Abbey Chapel before.
New boundaries, new heights.
And the one microphone is, multiple things can be true at the same time. It can be true that we failed to procure more that worked, and also that it's going to be helpful in us not interrupting each other.
Yes.
We have a couple of topics of conversation that we wanted to bring up. I think that first, as we talked about all semester long, circumcision, it's a big one for us. But I think we've discussed in these past weeks that we've really come back together, and I think that although we don't see eye to eye, you're okay. You've accepted that it's okay to not see eye to eye.
Yeah, I think this class has actually been instrumental in this, and to say that this is beating a dead horse, understatement of the century. But it's always worth bringing it back up. I hope it's not too echoey, but I guess my piece is just that before I was universaling my morality. I was thinking about the fact that I would never circumcise my child, and it feels wrong, and it feels like genital mutilation, and therefore it has to be genital mutilation for everybody. And as I brought up on our final day of class, I think what I've come to realize is that, like, my truth is not the truth, and human tradition doesn't follow logic, and logic is false and not real, and what is true of me does not need to be true of everybody. But also I want to affirm my belief. Like, it is my truth. It is my truth that I think circumcision is wrong for my children, and like that is the particular fiction that paints my world, and it is true to me.
What a beautiful conclusion to the very first, I believe, that circumcision was the first of many debates that have been had between you two. Atheist versus Judaism. And they came to peace. Atheists didn't destroy anyone with facts and logic. No, we came to a beautiful conclusion.
I will hand this back to you, but I do have one more thing to say. Very similar thing about my atheism, because CJ, as you know,
well, actually, I don't know if we ever really made clear that Indigo was the atheist that my paper last semester was about, but it is true. Indigo and I did debate over whether... What was the debate? What was our debate?
Well, I am a proud atheist, and you did not like that label. And I think what I've come to realize is, like, I'm an atheist, yes, and I'm an atheist, and it's just, like, sort of more honest to call myself an atheist rather than anything else, because it's like, I don't think my atheism necessarily has to mean that I think it is the truth, but it's like, yes, I'm an atheist. It would be kind of dishonest to say that I wasn't, because again, like circumcision, like, atheism is the particular fiction that colors my world. It's just like what it is. Like, yeah, I was raised to be maybe like a culturally Christian atheist, but like, I don't know. It's honest.
Atheism, don't you mean Protestant? Just kidding. Well, we haven't really even come to peace. And, well, I don't know. I guess that's something vaguely religion related that's been on my mind is it's crazy the way that, like, religious conflict and, like, just, like, that the whole point of religion is framed as, like, is it true or not? Huh? Like, it's just fascinating that, like, there's this whole, like, the culture war atheist, like, YouTube atheist destroys Christian with facts and logic. Like, it's just vested in the idea of, like, disproving it as if that would ever mean anything. It's just a fascinating thing to me.
Well, as I say a lot, I think when you have religion that is belief-based, that you're going to be you're always going to have a dichotomy of one side trying to prove it and one side trying to disprove it, because belief is something that you can't. Unfortunately, no one will admit that it's just vibes. But I think that on atheism, I don't like that label. I think that it's your truth, and I think that that's okay, but I also think that it creates this superficial distance between you and Christianity. And I think that that's only important because Christianity informs so much of you and a lot of other people standing in society.
I guess to that I would say, if living in Christian America, oh, my spiral necklace hasn't been out this whole time. That's really sad. Whatever. If I can't call myself an atheist because it is in a sense dishonest because we live in an obviously like Christian nation, then why do you get to call yourself non-Christian? Because I understand that, like, I would like to think that I have, like, obviously you are Jewish and like that counteracts a lot of those things, but I would like to think that I have done work that would similarly counteract some of these ideas. And if that means that like you get to no longer, or if you get to call yourself something other than Christian, why can't I?
Okay, I guess I think what I'm trying to say is that atheism is a label for a feeling that a lot of people have, but atheism is a label that is only available to a certain group of people that, like, I don't know, Jews who don't believe in God are not really claiming this atheism thing. That they're just kind of something else there. And I think with a like religion like Christianity, like, there isn't that cultural part to it that you can kind of drift to. And so I think atheism is kind of like, I don't know, I'm not drawing a comparison between being culturally Jewish and being atheist, because that's not it. But I think that it's like two sides of the same coin. I think it's fine to call it your label, but I think that it is your label. It is your label. And that's my truth.
Yes.
This is not related to you guys. This is my own personal journey, my own conversations I've had with CJ about my own internal feelings of religion and spirituality. But I feel very left out of this conversation because I don't have a label. I suppose that at one time you could have called me Catholic. At another time you could have called me a Tumblr witch. But I don't know. I almost feel like I don't have a lot to say about that. I am feeling, although I was kind of going on a rampage a couple weeks ago about how I would never join a cult because they're so ridiculous. How could anyone believe that? I also feel that I'm just like kind of waiting for something to come along that I'll be like, oh yeah, like, okay. Which is maybe how people join cults. So maybe I will join a cult. Maybe that will fulfill me. And my the hole inside me that will be filled by a set of spiritual rules for me to follow.
I think that's really interesting that you bring up cults, because in my other religion class we're talking about new American religious traditions, and I don't know, I think just that the biggest thing that we've discussed is that, like, time is the most important factor in a religious movement developing. And I think that we think things are silly now, and we think, oh, you know, why would you ever join a cult that involves a spaceship and going up? But, like, right, people were saying that 150 years ago about Mormons, or people were saying that about Jesus, and people were saying that about the Buddha. They were saying that about everyone. And I think that, like, I don't know, I don't like the cult. This whole class has changed my perspective on the cult language. And back to Tumblr witch. I think I just want to jump back to Tumblr witch. I think if I were to put atheists, like, Tumblr witches are in with the atheists in terms of cultural Christianity, and I'm happy to fall back into that one.
Well, I just need to say, it kind of sounds to me like you just contradicted yourself a little bit, because you did just say, like, you know, religion doesn't need or shouldn't need, like, time to have legitimacy. And then that also Tumblr witches, which that they are just culturally Christian. It's like, yes, well, like, every movement is born out of what you think you fell out of a coconut tree. You exist in the context of all in which you live and all that came before you. Tumblr witches obviously are a product of their cultural Christianity. That doesn't mean that they're not necessarily doing something new, but they're also obviously building off of that from which they came.
Well, and I think that that's really beautiful and correct. And I think that if I'm, like, gonna end up doing anything. Well, I feel like I've said this before, like waiting around for the right sort of religious feeling to strike me. That's how you end up being a revert to Christianity. Like you might find me at like lesbian like hippy dippy church in 15 years. Yeah, I might be a Quaker, I might be an Episcopalian, like I don't know, but I forgot my thought. Someone else speak and then I'll remember it.
Okay, so back to the Tumblr witches. We talked about Wicca in this other class, which Wicca is this whole other thing, and people don't like it, and it seems weird, and that seems much more overtly like conservative, like wellness to neo-Nazi pipeline. But then in the just like neo-pagan, like assorted, which I don't want to judge. Tumblr witches are as religious as they want to be. That's fine. But like in the under the neo-pagan heading, I think that. Right, it is a new religious movement starting in the 1800s. Like it still follows that kind of development, even though it's so decentralized. And I think that I don't know. We just had this guest speaker come in from the witch shop across the street, and we were just hearing her talk, and I was just like, not even just in like what she believes and what she does is culturally, it's just like the whole assumption, the whole underlying foundation of it. I was like, you do you, but like this, I was talking and I wrote in my little journal after class, I was like, I think that there's this desire, people have kind of figured out the connection between Christianity and whiteness, and that Christianity is a fundamental foundation of that. And so in an effort to distance people themselves from whiteness, like kind of like younger middle classish white people are trying to distance themselves from Christianity, and that can take a whole lot of roots, right? It doesn't just have to be witch and pagan, or atheist. It can be a whole, going to other religions too. But I think that like they can be doing something new, but they can still be culturally Christian. Like I think Christianity just continues to evolve, and I think we have to admit that.
Wow, damned if we do, damned if we don't, huh? What are we supposed to do? Fine, I'll go back in time and make myself not be born a white culturally Christian in America. I'm JKing. But I do sort of, and this is the thing, and ultimately, I think we were having this discussion in class, and by that I mean this is something I said, that like we can try to be meta and talk about like the way that the Western tradition of philosophy or what have you shapes the way we think, but that doesn't make it not shape the way we think. And so that's why I can be like, like religion, it doesn't have to be true. It's about like the cultural factors. It's about practice and what builds community. But also like, I'm also like, okay, this is fucking nonsense, which is what the point I wanted to make about cults, in that there is that part of me that wants to be open-minded, but there's that little kernel of my like mother in there being like, that's fucking ridiculous. A UFO didn't say anything to you. What are you talking about? You were on drugs. And I think it's beautiful to have our beliefs to fall back on. And my belief is that UFOs aren't real.
Yes, exactly. Like, just like it's honest for myself to call myself an atheist, or it's honest to say that like circumcision is wrong for me. Like, yeah. What I believe is what I believe.
And to the point of Tumblr witches and that kind of whole Wiccan thing, whatever, I think that, yes, I think it's fascinating because there's like some people that are really into it in a way that seems genuine. And then sometimes it's like, you bought crystals from Amazon. Like what? Yeah, yes.
That's all I had to say.
Right. And I'm kind of like saying nothing right now, but I was so into it, guys. I had a wand that I made myself. I should have freaking brought it. Show and tell. It's like kind of like a stick that I whittled like the top part of, so it kind of looks like a Harry Potter wand, and there's a handle, and I wrapped like purple ribbon around the bottom, and I kind of carved out the different signs of the elements. You guys know this. I have a history of making spell jars. When I was 14, my freshman year of high school, everyone got a spell jar for their birthday. I had an altar in my room, my poor parents, because I thought, and I don't even know, I thought I was being subtle about it, but they, they didn't even know what was happening. They just thought I was hippy dippy, which I guess I was. And I would read runes and that kind of stuff. It's like, I would love to want something like that, but I just like there is something about the like new spiritual movements that like ring so hollow. There's just something about it that, and this is a conversation we had in Apocalypse Now last semester about how like a lot of people are, well, you can debate if Christianity is growing or shrinking, and I think it depends on where you're looking, but there certainly are young people that are being raised vaguely like standard non-religious, just like American suburban kind of atheist, or there are people that are turning away from Christianity. And I think that there is a spiritual void there. Like, I don't want to, Indigo's not going to like this, but I do think that like everyone has a spirituality, everyone has a religion, no matter if you claim to or not. Like there's non-rational like ways in which you act because of things you believe. And I think it's hard to define like, okay, what is religion actually? But I think that spirituality is an important part of human practice, right? Like that we evolved spiritual, and I don't know, it just seems like we're in this weird place where there's a lot of people that are not religious, and I think, I don't know, it feels sort of like what is next? I just don't know. I don't know.
Well, I would agree with you, actually. I do think that like we need spirituality, or in some sense, but I don't see my atheism as being mutually exclusive with spirituality. This is a conversation I've had with during the summers. The past couple summers, I worked on this flower farm back in New Hampshire, and all the people who work there are like culturally Christian. My boss like believes in fairies and goes out into the garden, and the fairies talk to her, and she creates flower essences that we sell.
I was also talking to the fairies, and then I had to stop leaving them offerings because I got scared that they were coming in my room also in high school.
So I talk with them a lot about it, and
The adults, not the fairies.
right. To be clear, I talk with my coworkers, and they're all like adults, and I mean, I'm an adult too, for fuck's sake, but they're like 50. And I talk with them about my beliefs, and they're always like, I don't know, it's like, you call yourself an atheist, but it doesn't seem like you're an atheist at all. You seem so spiritual. And it's like, I don't know. I think that I can like see wonder in things, and like the goal of my atheism is not like to be rational and to see the cause and effect of it all. No, I can see the wonder in things, and also I don't know. I mean, and maybe at the end of the day, this whole debate is just a semantics thing, and it's just I need a new word. But it's like, okay, atheism is just like like I guess maybe labels just isn't the vibe. Should we move on to our next topic?
Yeah. Which is,
I'm gonna go check the level of because that would really suck. We're at 19 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the next topic is Judeo-Christian, and
Say about this, but I'm really interested.
this is more of like a me rant section. I really struggle with when people use the label Judeo. People use it to describe all sorts of things, whether in academia or in politics or just in the culture. People love to say things are Judeo-Christian, or that they draw from the Judeo-Christian from the Judeo-Christian tradition, and I think that it just like really lends itself to the hegemonic nature of Christianity. And that, well, when I first learned about it, we were talking about it in the context of Jews assimilating in the United States, and the Jews were kind of trying to be like, oh, we're not really like that different than you, Judeo-Christian values, like it's not even really like this whole thing, like we can be meh. But it really evolves into this whole thing of, right, the Christian perception of Judaism is so radically different than what it actually is, and I'm constantly reminded of that. But I think, Christians think the biggest difference between Judaism and Christianity is that Jews don't believe in Jesus, but there's, just like a gazillion other things that are so much more important than that, right? Being a not belief-based religion is very important, and people don't put any acknowledgement to that. But I think that when we talk about Judeo-Christian values, we're forgetting that when new religious movements build themselves, they have to attach themselves or draw on older traditions to gain legitimacy. And so that's absolutely, we can very clearly see that with Christianity. But I think when Christianity is drawing some of its values from Judaism, or from one part of Jewish texts, right? They're drawing on things that are in the Old Testament, or these 5 books, but that's just a fraction of where Jewish values come from in terms of liturgy and Torah, and it's not all even written down, there's all this crap, whatever. And so when Christianity, or Christians, or anyone says Judeo-Christian values, I think, what are those values? Where do those values come from, and why are you bringing Jews into it? Because that's not the case anyway.
Well, I also feel the need to once again talk about Gnosticism, which has been on my mind, and I find it fascinating. And I just think what's funny is that, like, obviously we have our view of Christianity as it exists in America, and it's just fascinating that, like, nothing is tethered. Like, that is not the Christianity. The Christianity we have is not the same Christianity. And, like, religions obviously do need to gain their legitimacy from this idea that they've been around for so long, but it's like everything at this point is a new religion. Like, things have changed so much. And I watched a YouTube video about Gnosticism one night in bed, and it blew my mind. And I don't know who is familiar with Gnosticism, but basically this video is informing me that, you know, kind of this group, and they were not monolithic. This is my awful reading of YouTube video history, but just like this group of people, basically, like, in very early Christianity, like first few hundred years after Jesus, we should talk about if Jesus was a real person or not, after Jesus died, and they basically believed that so there's God, and God is everything, and everything that exists is God interacting with itself and talking to itself. And there's this kind of female figure in the Holy Trinity. The feminine figure gives birth to this creature without God's permission. And so this creature is kind of outside of God's creation. And that creature, it doesn't know about the universe. It doesn't know about God. So that creature thinks it's God. I don't remember the names of any of these things. But basically, that false God is the God of the Old Testament. And the God, real God, this is getting so, like, confusing, but basically that the God of the Old Testament thinks that it's the real God, but it's not, and Jesus was sent by the true God to save humanity. And it's so different from, like, Christianity is so, the way that we perceive American Christianity right now is so, like, you believe in God and you believe in Jesus, and like you said, it's such a belief-based thing, but, like, I don't know, people throughout so much of history have had so many different readings of Christianity that were so different, and not every Christian ever has been a white Protestant.
I think my biggest issue is it creates this, like, false sense of linearity that Judaism naturally leads into Christianity, because the Christian reading of Judaism is that Jews are just Christians who missed the Jesus train. And so when you know, Christianity is always trying to make Judaism linear, right? If we were just talking about what were we talking about? Oh, different observances of Judaism, like Reform, Orthodox, right? You know, Christianity tries to put that on this, like, linear line of observance, when it's really more like denominations of something. And so, like, it just tries to, like, flatten it out. And, right, because Jews are such a small minority of the, you know, American population, but of the entire world's population, it kind of works. Because, right, Christianity is just going to trump it always. Anyway.
I'm struggling to find something to contribute to this.
Everybody say sausage, keep it going. Eggs, bacon, grits, sausage.
We gotta recalibrate. Okay. Can I introduce our next topic?
What is it?
Yeah. Well, because this is this topic was started off an anecdote that I was telling these two from class. So my Spanish class. In my Spanish class, we were doing these presentations, and this is in the Spanish class that we're talking about, like, a very, you know, watered down, because it's a Spanish class, but we're talking about just like decolonialism, and we were talking specifically that was relevant to this. We were talking about subaltern studies, and this white student got up and was talking about was talking about using subaltern studies to examine invisible disabilities, and they were using specifically their invisible disability, which was post-concussion disorder syndrome, post-concussion syndrome. And it was just really interesting to see them using like these frameworks that are used to try and like dissect like why some people are literally subhuman. And they were talking about it in terms of their concussion. And it was just sort of shocking to see like the way that, and I think it's really common for white people to, or just people in general, to want to frame the things that are negative in their life in terms of these much broader social issues. And it's just it's interesting.
Well, and yeah, we have this conversation a lot about people, white gay people at Mount Holyoke, that think they are the most oppressed people on the planet. And I don't know, because sometimes I'm like, I'm being mean. Like, these are people that are talking about, but I think that this story and the conversation we had surrounding it really cleared it up for me, because it's like, you can have bad things happen to you because of a social identity you have, but you don't have to apply this framework of like race to that, and you don't have to apply this framework of like colonialism and like subaltern studies. That is a crazy thing to use that for. And I don't know, it is a very interesting environment that we have at Mount Holyoke, because of it's all of these, like, again, white gay people that are very social justice-y. And on the one hand, I don't know, like I said, sometimes I'm like, I'm being mean. They're like, maybe it is hard to be gay. Maybe we wouldn't know. But it's kind of like, I'm fine. Like, I don't know. It's fascinating.
I would have to agree with you guys. I think that my only contributions to this, being in the US, being white, racial identity is the underlying foundation of all of society. And so that identity trumps a lot of things, right? You, like you said, you can have face discrimination because of a social identity, but that has to be framed in the context of how you are categorized racially in America.
And it's like, well, it's this sort of thinking where people want to be so black and white about it. And it's like, you can look at different scales. Like you can see yourself as a white privileged college student at Mount Holyoke. Like, people are cooking your food for you and cleaning your buildings for you, and you're paying a lot of money. Even if you're getting a lot of financial aid, you're still paying money that most people in the world do not have to come here. And I think that it is a thing. We talk about this a lot, of white people wanting to distance themselves from that. So they're like, I'm white, but I get a lot of financial aid. My family is like I feel like a lot. It's
And I just like I understand the instinct for sure. I understand the instinct for sure to like asterisk my whiteness with, oh, but I'm gay and get financial aid to go here. But it's like, okay, yeah, but I'm a white bitch. Like, at the end of the day.
Well, I remembered what I was trying to say, and it's just that people can't conceptualize that multiple things can be true. And it's like, yes, you can have, within the scope of other white people, or like, you know, whatever it may be, have experienced people saying bad things to you, experienced actually feeling really bad. And I think that facts don't care about your feelings. And this is actually such a very specific, almost sort of like white woman thing of like, well, this is how I feel. Well, it's how I feel. You're saying my feelings are, and it's like, it really can suck when bad things happen to you, and it also doesn't mean that you're like structurally oppressed. I've said my piece.
Yeah, so this is a question. I have no idea if this is actually going to bring any sort of interesting conversation, but this is a question that occurred to me, and I don't think I've actually asked these guys. And
Is this the thing we weren't allowed to talk about.
Yes, I wanted to. This is conversation happening live, first time ever. You are privy to this conversation. I don't know. Maybe a little weird because these guys are dating, but I don't know.
What is
The question is, would you get married?
Oh, I remember now.
Would you get married? And I guess I don't have a hard cut answer because I think about it a lot and I'm just like, I'm sometimes like, on one hand, I'm like, I think that I have this weird instinct to want to like cut ties with every single human tradition that I was born into, because a lot of them were born out of these horrible things. But then I'm like, well, that's kind of, it is in a sense like dishonest because some part of me wants to have a cute little wedding because obviously that's the human tradition I was born into. And also, I mean, like, again, I don't know. This is my sub question: are lesbian weddings inherently misogynistic? I think that straight weddings are to some extent inherently misogynistic. I don't know. I would just love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I think that I think about marriage in two ways, right? You have marriage in the eyes of the state. You have getting legally married or a domestic partner, like some kind of like registering with the state. And I think that it's an economic choice, right? If you for insurance reasons or for life planning, whatever, like there are reasons to do that. And like, obviously I don't think that gay marriage is the magic key that's going to make gay people equal, but I think that it's an important part in financial planning and things like that. So it does have a value. But I think that in my own personal philosophy, I think that right beyond that, getting married is not something that the government has anything to do with for me. I think that it's more about having a Jewish wedding or having some kind of practice of those rituals, because that's what marriage is more important to me. And I think that getting married in a legal sense is a choice. It's a good choice to have, but it's also not that important. It's also, socially speaking, people like the same way that white people think that racism ended with Obama, people think that homophobia ended with gay marriage in 2015. And so it's like, no, that's not the way it is. But I think that there's still a tradition I want to hold on to there, just not the one involving the state.
Well, and this is where I go back to the feelings thing, because, we were just talking about this idea of like, okay, well, we can criticize these things, and yet they are things that we were born into, and they are things that we want. And I guess it's sort of just, where do you draw the line? And I don't know. I know that like something like consumerism is not the biggest problem, but it is like, it's a thing, and people know that it's a thing, and yet they still overconsume. And I think that it's so easy to be like, oh, well, it's a wedding, we gotta buy a bunch of crap. Oh, well, it's Valentine's Day, we gotta buy a bunch of crap. Oh, it's a birthday, we gotta buy a bunch of crap. Oh, I had a really bad day, I gotta buy a bunch of crap. And when are we gonna stop buying a bunch of crap? When are we gonna like really and I guess I'm thinking about a wedding as in like a big ass party in a venue.
I just like I'm saying, like, yes, like obviously, like I don't think any of us are gonna be like bridezillas, like or what's a mapazilla, gender neutral bridezilla. Anyway, but I'm saying like even like my older brothers, like they had their cute little like fuck ass like outdoorsy weddings, even that.
And like obviously, yes, I want a wedding. Yeah. And I was at a Catholic Long Island wedding, first wedding I've ever been to, last summer, and I cried when they said the vows. So if that tells you something.
In this day and age, you get so little community, and maybe it's worth it to hold on to the community that you get. Like those. I've said it before, there are two parties that everybody in your life is expected to attend, no matter how far they have to travel, and it's your wedding and your funeral. So it's like, maybe we hold on to the little things. Maybe weddings are cute and awesome and can be cute and awesome and their community, and we should, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
back to the our straight weddings inherently misogynistic. I don't know about wedding, but like I do think about this sometimes, and like I don't want this to come off as patronizing, but I just for straight women, like I just like I how do they do? I would be so hopeless. Like I don't know. Like obviously, like there are like I know women in my life who are in marriages that are like normal with men, and I know women who are not, but it's also like I just your chances of being with a man that is normal in any sense that can even just hold up their end of the bargain so low already, and I just feel so bad and I don't know what to do.
Well, and this, I also want to bring up this conversation that we have a lot in talking about, like, oh, are white gay people oppressed? Our favorite question. It kind of feels like being a lesbian is such a good deal, because we have this conversation about how gay men are the ones who get a lot of the fire, and lesbians just kind of get to like pass unnoticed. And like people think that it's wrong to be a lesbian, but people aren't. Like, you're kind of fine. It's less humiliating to be a lesbian than I imagine it would be to be a gay man. And like thank God I don't have to like try to find a normal straight man to marry. Like, can you imagine? No.
Once upon a time I could. But okay, but just to, gay men are like traitors to masculinity, and lesbians are victims. Sort of. Like we're like, well, it's I think there's a similar thing, like transmascs and trans femmes. Like trans femmes are like traitors or predators, and trans men are like, or transmascs, whatever, are like victims. They're trying to escape their femininity, that whole J.K. Rowling thing. Not that J.K. Rowling's the only TERF, but like I did in 2020 read her that little manifesto she wrote, and it's gnarly.
Yeah, I think that right, lesbians are still allowed to be women if they want to be. Gay men are automatically removed from being allowed to be men, and I think that in going back to the gay marriage thing, that's why gay marriage is not like a solution to anything, just because there is always going to be that social factor of like you cannot move outside of the boundaries of traditional marriage, otherwise you are literally revoking your rights to be a man.
I really need to have like a meaningful interpersonal relationship with a man, because I don't know anything really about many men. I don't know what is going on in their heads. Honestly, I kind of view men the way that I feel like a lot of men view women, except not with the sexual aspect. Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, they all look the same to me. Yeah, I'm just kind of seeing them, and I like my brain doesn't process them, which is kind of a terrible thing to say. And like, I think in having this attitude, I'm sort of giving in to the dualizing urge, and I'm trying to kind of like make up for the whatever vague sense of harm I feel men have done to me. And I just really think about it, and in my life there just have not really been that many men, and I would love to know what, like, your average like straight woman, what she thinks of men as a species.
I don't know. I think I want to end on this one for my part. I think that I hear the way my friends talk about men, and I'm just like, they don't like them either, but there's still this like, they still feel this like important urge. They don't name it as a social pressure, but this urge to be obsessed with men and wanting to have sex with men and to do the whole going out thing and to do the getting dressed up thing. And it's like, I don't know, it just goes back to like some of the most important social norms that guide our everyday lives are just right back with gender. Like, you can't get away from that one.
Well, that is what I want. I also wanted to say like how queerness is like, or not queer, yeah, I know, like queer, don't even get me started. Being gay or lesbian is always going to be like, I think always going to also be an experience with gender. Like, you could be the most femme lesbian or the most masculine gay man, but if you're not heterosexual, like, you're giving up some part of what it means to be a man or a woman. And that has helped my understanding of my own gender a lot, and just like realizing that, like, yeah, I guess that's my shit. That's what I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.